Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's DLC is officially done, baby. And you know what that means? It's time to rank every single track in this game. Oh my goodness, this video is going to kill me by the end of it. But yes, all 96 tracks are going to be ranked, and you know how hard it is to rank 96 tracks. I don't know if you really know. It's hard. There's a lot of tracks in this game, so of course not every single track is going to agree with every single person. Everyone's going to have their own tier list. Everyone's going to have their own opinions and thoughts. Some of my worst are going to be some people's best, and vice versa. It's completely okay to disagree, but just let me know nicely in the comment what you disagree with. Let's be loving and kind to not only these opinions in the video, but also to anyone else's down below that comments their list. But thank you so much for tuning in. Leave a like and subscribe because this video took a while and it helps out a lot. Thank you for the support, guys. Let's dive into the video. Starting off our list at number 96, and potentially the worst track in the game, is Toad Circuit from Mario Kart 7. And honestly, it's not a terrible track when it comes to the actual design. It's just incredibly boring, and especially considering the fact that this was paid DLC, and there was a lot of other options in Mario Kart 7, this one just kind of felt pointless. Once again, there's just nothing special about this track. It just feels like a road with a crowd watching you. And just not that great. Next up, we have Dry Dry Desert, which once again just doesn't do a whole lot for me as a desert track. It's just a couple back and forths in the sand, dodging some pokies, and then a random water area at the end. I don't know, it feels slow, and it feels like it's just not that interesting to me. I love how there's actual traffic to dodge on Toad's Turnpike, but oh my goodness, it is the most boring track you could possibly think of. It literally is just a lap around a highway. That's a Mario Kart track in this game. So yeah, for that, it doesn't do anything special. I love weaving in between the cars and all, but it's just a straightforward driving track. Boot Lake is one that I thought was okay, and then it slowly fell on me on my list because it's just extremely short and it doesn't do really anything special at all. Even the one shortcut is very awkward to hit unless you hit a really good drift, which most players probably aren't going to do that's not that experienced. It's just not that well designed of a track in my opinion, and it's just not that fun. The first one that's probably going to get some hate from somebody because I know there's some Excite Bike lovers out there, but honestly you could not even touch the stick and be perfectly fine until you get to the bend at the end. It's just two straightaways full of ramps. This track really depends on items, and there's a lot of times if you're in first, odds are you're not going to get caught unless there's a blue shell, and even then probably still not. And if you're in the back of the pack, honestly, you're not going to catch up either because mushrooms or sped up items are really not going to help you here. I remember immediately having a disgusting feeling in my stomach for Sky High Sunday, and it really is just a big loop. It's okay, it's definitely not just complete trash by any means, but it's just very boring, and considering the fact that you spend most of the track in zero gravity, it feels like you're moving slowly, and when you're falling from the sky, it's just like you're slowly falling down. I don't know, it feels like it's kind of holding you back a little bit, and it just doesn't feel that interesting, and it just feels weird the fact that you can go through the guardrails like speed boost. I don't understand that. And we're back with another controversial one. I know a lot of people are going to say Baby Park is either going to be an extremely messy, chaotic, boring mess, or a chaotic, fun experience. And it really depends on who you ask. Me, personally, I think it's just a chaotic mess. I think there's so much to be had with the potential of a baby-themed park all around the outsides of the actual track, but it's just a loop over and over and over again where you're getting smacked and beat up by tons of items from everybody on the track. And if you have tons of real players, it is an absolute mess. And honestly, I don't think it's in a good way. There's nothing super fun about just randomly getting smacked by shells bouncing off of the walls and people using really powerful items that are in the back of the pack. To me, it's not a great track. Number 89, we have our first Mario Circuit, and this one is just kind of lackluster to me. You're hitting a giant 8, which is cool to kind of occasionally see the people above you that are actually in zero gravity, and it's one of the first times you can actually see zero gravity in action. I thought that was pretty cool, but it's overall pretty boring. There's really nothing in your way besides some piranha plants on the side of the stage, but yeah, it's kind of a straightforward drive. Tokyo Blur is everything but a blur. I mean, seriously, it feels like a slow, casual drive throughout a city, and that's really about it. For 3 different laps, it really doesn't feel like it because there's nothing really special about any of the laps. It's just a road with some buildings on the outsides. And this one was kind of disappointing that this is how they chose to represent Tokyo. And we're back again with another city track with London Loop, which once again suffers from the same problem. It just feels like a road. There's not a lot else going on here. Just a lot of arrows pointing you into the direction that you need to go, which to me is never a fun themed track. Just roads and arrows. It feels like I'm actually in the city, which isn't great. Now for the last one of our current section, I know people are going to torch me for this one, but Hear me out for a second. If this track was to come out as a Rainbow Road now and you never seen it before, people would absolutely hate this one. There is absolutely nothing special that happens with the track itself. The environment and everything around it, yes, it's spectacular to see the city lights down below and the fireworks above and the train beside you. It looks beautiful. That's not the thing here. This is a checkpoint-based track where you're just driving forward all of these checkpoints and you're just kind of going forward on a straightaway Rainbow Road. There's no real obstacles. There's nothing that can really hurt you besides a couple of bouncing chain chomps, and besides that, there's just nothing interesting about this Rainbow Road compared to the others that we've had. Moving on to our next tier of tracks, starting off with Yoshi's Valley at number 85. Yoshi's Valley is definitely a decently fun track. The problem with it is that it has, I think, too many alternate routes when there's only like one or two that are going to secure you a faster route compared to the others. They're just kind of pointless and there for no reason. Yet you can get some extra items on some of them, but they don't really do anything special, and the rest of the track is pretty bland in comparison. Cheep Cheep Beach feels like a beach, and honestly, the only reason I think I'd put it this high is simply due to the little jungle area with the lighthouse at the end I thought was really cool, and the boardwalk is a pretty interesting concept, but everything else just feels weird. I can't really put my finger on it. When you jump into the beach area with the water and the sand and the hills, it just feels random, and it's just like you can kind of just go under the water. You can't really tell what's track and what's not. I don't know. It's Rome Avanti tries to do more than just give you city streets and tries to give you some of the classic Rome architecture in the background and some of the track itself, but besides the Colosseum and one kind of park area, there's not a lot else that they give you, and it's still, once again, lots of follow the arrows. You hear the words water park and instantly start thinking of an amazing water park themed Mario Kart track, but this just doesn't do it. I don't know, there's just not a lot of water park in this thing. There's no water slides or water rides at all. I mean, all you really have is an underwater merry-go-round, so I think they completely missed the mark. And then you fly through a Ferris wheel at the end. They could have really made this a fun water park themed track. Sometimes Nintendo likes to revamp old tracks, and then occasionally we get tracks like this, Rainbow Road from the SNES, which actually doesn't revamp anything. It's ideally the same exact track, and for a game that's the 8th installment in the franchise and in this modern time, I feel like this track should have been upgraded to show that, and should have changed in some way. I'm gonna be honest, I did not have any clue that there were so many Rosalina's Ice World fans out there, and from my last video of ranking Wave 6, I truly hear you guys, but I still don't understand. I know a lot of you guys point out the big hole. Okay, you drift around a big hole. Mario Galaxy theme. Yeah, okay, look, it's an ice themed track that looks a lot like Sherbert Land. I mean, a lot like Sherbert Land without any real special things going on. I mean, you slowly drive across the top of the ice or in the water, and then the track's pretty much over already. There's just not a lot going on. And yes, it has some Galaxy references, but it feels like a snow world with just some Galaxy assets slapped into the background. They're not even implemented within the track itself. Yeah, it's just not going to be that high for me. Thwomp Ruins is one of those tracks I feel like people just forgot it existed sometimes, and I definitely can see why, because there's nothing super special about it, but I really do love the giant rolling stone that breaks a new path for you to hit a glider section, but for the most part, it is a pretty average track. Yes, you can go into the wall as well and go underwater for a couple segments, but at the end of the day, it's just a basic Ruins-themed track. Our next city track is a slow step up from the other ones, because now it actually adds moving vehicles on the road and lots of traffic to dodge, which I actually really love. Also a banger soundtrack. I don't know why this soundtrack goes so hard, but this track isn't terrible. It definitely does do a little bit more than the rest and adds a couple more obstacles and things to look out for, and actually can be one of the harder city tracks, but at the same time, it's once again streets and arrows and doesn't really stray away from that. They took Mario Kart 8's Rainbow Road in a different direction, which could be looked at as a good thing from some people, but to me, I just never really liked it. I don't know, I never really felt anything for it. They kind of made it more mechanical instead of natural and included it within a space station, but I don't know, I never really felt much for this track. It's not terrible by any means, but it just feels not like Rainbow Road, and this track can be very difficult. There are some extreme sharp turns, and on 200cc it can be nearly impossible unless you slamming the brake the entire time. I think Bone Dry Dunes gets more hate than it should, because it's definitely not a great track, but it does some unique things for a desert themed track. It has a different color, it's like a sunset with a red hue to it, and it just feels different. You got alternate paths, you have giant sand pits that you could fall into, and a giant cave of dry Bowser to fly in at the end. It's definitely better than most of the desert tracks that we've been seeing from Mario Kart. It's just not that great compared to the rest. This one absolutely pains my heart to put it this low on the list, because I love the theme of Merry Mountain. I am a Christmas snow theme fanatic, so this was so exciting to see, but it's just such a slow going track and not a lot happens. I mean, you get to the top of the mountain and are ready to blast down, and it feels like you're slowly going back down the mountain. Like you're not kind of hitting the speeds that I was expecting, and I don't know. I just wanted a little bit more from this Christmas themed track. The theme is amazing, but the track itself is a little lackluster. For the last one of this section, we have number 74, Dragon Driftway. This one is also kind of painful because I love Mario Galaxy 2, and the fact that they themed this whole track around Gobblegut, a boss battle in Mario Galaxy 2, is actually pretty insane. But you just don't really know what's happening. The outsides of the track, I feel like if the camera was zoomed out, would look so much cooler, but when you're actually racing on this theme, it just feels like you're going through lots of hallways, and there's nothing else really happening. Just this real skinny road that you're sharing the track with another 11 racers. There's not a lot of shortcuts, there's not a lot of extra things happening, so outside of the thematic purpose of it being Gobblegut, it doesn't do that much to stand out. Moving on to our next tier tracks, we have number 73, Mario Circuit 3 from the SNES. This one is an incredibly basic track that once again they didn't really alter or change from Mario Kart 8, which is why it's not higher. But as far as the classic tracks go, this one can actually be a lot of fun with the item pool. You can pull tons of mushrooms and speed up items in order to cut corners and pretty much just go throughout the sand areas, which could make for some interesting last second races with your friends. Donut Plains does suffer from the same thing, but it does slightly change the track and add some things like the Monty Moles, and also the fact that there's a new underwater section with a little bit of a boardwalk, which is something different. It's still an overall basic track, which is why it's still this low. Moo Moo Meadows at number 71 is also similar to the last two tracks, as it's just a calm, easy drive through a farm. Yes, there's not a lot happening here, but it is a really pretty looking track with a great soundtrack, and the glider section can be kind of fun towards the end with the tons of mounds of grass that you have to dodge. Athens Dash is the first track that we have from the city tracks that aren't just smack dab in the middle of a city. Unfortunately, it's the actual layout that hurts this one the most. I love everything that this track has to offer. It just feels like an absolute nightmare to drive on sometimes. You're going up hills and absolutely can't see anything that's in front of you. Sometimes you're getting shot off ramps where you have to make an immediate right turn and you just can't see it fast enough. There's just a lot of little problems and inconsistencies with the track layout that I just found pretty annoying. But overall, the theming and everything could have made this a lot higher. Next up, we have Mario Circuit from the Game Boy Advance. To me, this is one of my favorite tracks in the game for some reason. I don't know why, but I can definitely understand why a lot of people won't like it that much because it's extremely basic. The only thing it really adds is a giant in the sky U-turn and an excuse to use zero gravity, but for the most part, that's about it. I just find it to be pretty interesting to throw that in there. They keep too much of the track to its basic counterpart from its original game, which doesn't add a lot of depth in Mario Kart 8. Bangkok Rush kind of suffers from the same thing as Athens Dash, where it's just a really cool themed track and has some cool elements to it, but it just feels like it was designed in a wacky, weird way. I think most of my problem is the section where you can go above or below ground, and then you have to jump on these stairs, which just feels like immediate right turns and don't feel like it's supposed to be driven on. I don't know, I can't really explain it, but to me this track has some definitely wacky choices with the way that the track turns, but it is a cool thematic one. Next up, we have Ice Outpost. This track is really just two lanes. It's a yellow and a green lane, but its simplicity can be kind of fun. When you're battling another player and you're both traveling on the different lanes and trying to hit each other with items, can cause for some cool matchups. And then the final giant turn at the end where some are drifting above you and some are below. It's a really cool concept just to have these two lanes interweaving each other throughout the entire track, but overall, it doesn't do anything too special to beat the bottom of this list. Number 66, 6, we have Sherbertland, which is a really cool themed track because it's a nighttime Christmassy themed track at night, and you can see the northern lights and the igloos with the little penguins. It's really cool looking, but overall the track itself is a slow track. You're either on the ice or in the water driving real slow, and there's not a lot going on besides the penguins walking around and the ice on top of the ice that you can actually run into. And for the most part, it's just a really beautiful track to drive in. It's just not that fun of an actual track to drive at. Sunset Wilds is another fun little throwback track, but it never amounts to anything super special, and it doesn't change anything up too much, and for some reason, it doesn't have the day and night cycles based on, I guess, if this game just maybe cannot handle it within that certain engine or something, I don't know. But yeah, we don't really ever see the actual sun set, which is kind of disappointing. Royal Raceway is a basic track, but it's a fun one to drive in, and just gliding into the hot air balloons feels really cool, and its simplicity makes it still a decent track to race on. Daisy Circuit is an interesting pick for Mario Kart Wii, and maybe some people will put this higher, but to me, it reminds me a lot of the city tracks that we've been getting from Tour, but just not that long and not that interesting with the different style of laps. It's just the same 3 laps around this little tiny city, which doesn't do much for me. I really do love that turn around the lighthouse at the end though. Fun fact, my friends hate this track so much they coined it Goofy River, so naturally, since everyone that I know hates this track, I had to put it lower than where I would have put it. I think it's a really fun track, I do, but I can see why people really don't like it because it doesn't do anything that special besides the walking patooies that go around the map. For the most part, it's just a simple drive through a very short track in this jungle-themed area, but going through the waterfall I thought was really cool, and I just love the simplicity and the design of this track. Another track coming from the GBA, which is Snowland at number 61, is a actually really fun snow-themed track. It's just very basic, and once again, I have to put it as low as it is just because it doesn't do a lot to stray away from its version from its original game. It adds a little bit of verticality to the map and some troughs, but overall, it's just a very basic track. I think it does great for being basic as well, though. I think there's nothing wrong with being a basic track if you have fun track design, but still, it just doesn't do a lot to put itself higher. And the last track for this section is Sweet Sweet Canyon at number 60. This track could have been even better in my opinion, because it is a sweets themed track. They have some sections where you're going through donuts and knocking over candy corn cones on the ground. I just wish there was actually more that they did with this, like maybe fly into a gingerbread house or a castle or something like that, a candy castle. So I love the thematics of this stage. I just wish they pushed it a little bit more, but it definitely still is a decent track. Starting the next category at number 59, we have Bowser's Castle 3 from the SNES. This one surprised me a little bit. I didn't expect it to be this changed, and they did change a lot here, including a giant wall to go up in zero grav, and also the fact that there's lots of little paths and branches. You can go up on the little side wall too if you want. There's lots of cool elements here. After staring at this list, the one thing that I'm not sure if I should have put Paris Promenade this high, simply due to the fact that it is a lot of just city streets and arrows once again. But I think it's just the fact that it was one of the first ones we got and it left a big impression on me, maybe changes it slightly. I love flying towards the Eiffel Tower and given 2 different options to go left or right, so there is some uniqueness to this track, and obviously on the last lap going in reverse and whizzing by the other racers was pretty cool, but overall it's still an average city track. Next up we have Moonview Highway, which once again reminds me a lot of a city track, as you're just going through this New York themed city and just hitting tons of dash pads, and I love the fact that you're going very fast throughout the entire thing. And also at the very beginning you have this kind of outer city area where you could easily fall off the road and run into just oncoming traffic. There's a lot to watch out for, and it definitely keeps you on your toes, but it still just feels like another city track to me. Daisy Cruiser is an awesome throwback track where you're literally on a cruise ship, and I love the different options where you can go below deck into the water or stay above deck. And I know it's a cruise ship, so where else are you going to go, but I just think it still suffers from the fact of being one giant oval, and it just is over before you know it. Piranha Plant Cove turned out to be a fun track, and I really loved when we actually got to get out of the water and go to the little island thing at the top, see the lighthouse and the tiki torches and the palm trees and stuff was great, but it's one of those tracks I feel like we spend way too much time underwater and there's not a lot of interesting stuff happening down there. Choco Mountain Mountain is another one that doesn't do anything too special, but it's still just a vibes track to race on. There's just something about the foggy air and just this big rock mountain that you're driving through within the caves and the falling boulders. It's fun. I love the colors of it, even though lots of it's just brown. It's a weird thing to explain because it just feels vibey. I don't know. I love it though. Next up, we have Madrid Drive at number 53. This is a city track that started to change some things for me and make me really like what I saw. It's not just you driving through some streets. There's lots of things that you'll go through, like the indoor of a mall section, a art museum, and even a little street market with vendors lining the streets. I actually thought this was a cool track. Nothing, once again, super special, but it is good for a city track. Amsterdam Drift also added some cool elements, like going through this little town with windmills and flying through this little village was really cool. There's some small underwater sections which are really fun to go through, and also there's a really cool flower-filled garden area at the end where you'll go through like this tulip field. Really cool stuff besides just a street, so I was definitely surprised to see that. Coming in at number 51, we have Twisted Mansion. From a mansion-themed track in Mario Kart 8, I did want a little bit more, maybe Luigi's Mansion themed, or just bring back Luigi's Mansion back from Mario Kart DS, but this one is not bad at all. There's a really cool underwater section that looks like you're going into a monster's mouth, and then you're flying on the outside into the other section of the mansion, which is pretty cool as well, and there's just some really cool hallways to go down. Thematically, it's great. I just wanted a little bit more and some more uniqueness to the mansion itself. It seems like a lot of stuff that we've seen in the past. Coming in at number 50, we have Mario Circuit from the DS. This one they've changed to make it feel a lot better than the original, and I can't really explain what it all is. I know they added that new forest section with Wiggler, which is really cool, and I just like the different themes of this track. For it being a Mario Circuit, it does some great things, and there's some cool little shortcuts you can take too if you have mushrooms. I think this was well handled to be put into Mario Kart 8. Rock Mountain is another one in my opinion that's just vibes. I love just the kind of this nature themed area with tons of pine trees, and then you have the sky inside of the cliff that you can actually glide over. There's some cool elements, and I know it spends a lot of its time making you glide, which a lot of people might not like since you're not actually racing, you're kind of flying through the air, but it's one of the few tracks that has us glide this much, and it's kind of unique for that. I know a lot of people give New York Minute a lot of beef, and I don't really understand why. It definitely does feel like New York. I even love like the little Central Park area that it gives you, and it feels like you're going through the city and you can make your own turn through the square depending on where you want to go. I think it's great, and even the little parking garage at the end and the little theater and everything, I think they did a really good job. Of course, they could always do more. I even would have personally preferred a New Donk City instead, but this is a really good representation of New York, and I thought it was a fun city track for once. Next up, we have Super Bell Subway, which is just a subway station. But it's still really cool how you get to go down there and dodge all the oncoming trains. I think it's a cool theme track, and I think it offers some, skill level that some of the other tracks don't, where you actually have to pay close attention to what's coming your way on these tight turns. Dolphin Shoals not only has great music, but it's an underwater track that actually feels like it's not really underwater at all times. You're blasting through jet streams, and there's little rings that you can get even more dash through, and then you go into the eel's back. There's some really cool elements of this, and popping out of the whirlpool going around the outsides of that cliff is really, really neat. My only gripe is the way you glide back into the cave. It can be very hard to get back onto the track and hit that sharp left turn, but overall, this is a really good underwater track, and I don't really like underwater tracks. The last one of this section is Toad Harbor at number 45. It's another one that's not super special, but it just has good vibes to me. I love seeing the harbor out about when you're going down the giant hill, and it's a fun, relaxing track to race on. Moving on to the next section, we have Singapore Speedway at number 44. Singapore Speedway is a different style of city. It's at night and it has some really cool neon colors, and I love the vibes of this track. A lot of it is just streets once again and arrows. I just think all the neon lighting on all the buildings just makes it stand out more, and going to the top of that hotel with the water section on the pool is just amazing. I mean, they really put a lot of effort into this track, and it feels a lot different than the other city ones. Electrodrome reminds me a lot of Ice Ice Outpost with the two branching paths, and I love how you can see people race above you and below you depending on the situation, and the paths just interweaving with each other is really cool. And the fact that this whole place is just like a DJ club is awesome already. Sydney Sprint was one of the first tour tracks that I actually fell in love with. I love the vibes of the entire track. Now, a lot of it is just one very long road, but I think it does a really good job of intertwining different things within the stage itself. For instance, flying through the music hall was so cool, the little park area, jumping through the boat. I thought it had just a different different vibe than most of the other city tracks, which just felt bland to me, but this one stood out. Neo Bowser City is a different theme track, especially for Bowser. It's actually a city at night that's pouring rain the entire time, and all the neon signs are glowing with the rain. It also doesn't hold your hand because after a while the guardrails will be gone, and you have to hit some really good cuts on this wet, or you will fall off the road altogether. I really love the vibes of this place, and the fact that it's pouring the entire time is a unique element that we really don't see in many tracks. Sky Garden is another example of a basic track that just does stuff in the right way. There's really vital shortcuts to help you jump ahead, and it's a short yet fun track to race on. It's a track that also changed its original form into a unique new one, and I actually really love this track. Peach Gardens was a great throwback to return to, and it also added a new element which actually changes a lot. The third lap, you'll actually go around the track backwards, which was really cool to fly over the hedges and fly through the hand of Luigi. I really thought that was a great element to add, and it was overall a really good track. I feel like there's a lot of people that might place Wario's Gold Mine a lot higher, but personally, even though I really did enjoy it, it's still not amongst one of the greats. I really do love the giant ups and downs of the tracks themselves and the branching paths at the end and the fact that you have to dodge the mine carts, but I feel like the high ups and downs are really just more of an aesthetic thing. It doesn't really change the race up that much. Waluigi Stadium is a really good stadium track, but not the best one in my opinion. Yes, there's some fun elements, but there's a lot of elements where you're just slowly driving through mud areas. Like there's that one portion where you're driving all the way up this long straight path, barely dodging some slow moving fire bars and some cardboard cutouts of piranha plants. So not a lot is going on there. However, I really do love the additions to be able to do a trick off onto the top ramp, which is a lot of fun, and it does add some depth. Perhaps one of the most slept on tracks in the entire game is the very first track in the game, Mario Kart Stadium. For this being the very first track, it really is an amazing looking track. I mean, seriously, taking that giant ramp on by going into zero gravity for the first time and just saying, oh my goodness, I'm going to be driving up that is just utterly insane. Into the glider section to end it and seeing the crowd roar with the nighttime sky and the fireworks, it is a beautiful way to start the game. For a first track in the game to make it all the way up here at number 36 speaks volumes. Wario Stadium does a lot more than Waluigi Stadium. It's not just a lot of straight paths, it's a lot of cuts and turns that you have to be ready for, and it actually causes you to have to race pretty good. There's a lot of sections where you can just fly off the track, especially the zero gravity ramp, and you have to watch out for lots of obstacles as well, like fire bars, and it's just so good. I absolutely love this track, and it really does feel like a stadium. And the last track of this section is number 34, Big Blue. This to me should be one of the best tracks in the game, but I think it takes almost too much inspiration from F-Zero. And let me explain myself real quick. I feel like a lot of the time it's fake speed. It makes you feel like you're flying through this track really fast, which you might be, but you don't really feel it just because there's so many boost pads that just feels like you're going normal speed, and there's not a lot of obstacles where you have to make sure that you hit the right turn. A lot of the time you're just driving straight and just hitting boost pads, so much so that you can even make your own shortcuts in a lot of this track. To me, it just has that F-Zero feel where you're just like going super fast, but just dead straight. There's not a lot of turns, there's not a lot of like different track elements to really change it up. It's still a really good track, but I expected maybe a little bit more from this one for Mario Kart. Moving on to the next group of tracks, we have number 33, Calamari Desert, which actually does a lot different than its original. Being able to go right past the train into the tunnel and ride the tracks all the way to the end, and even use some mushrooms on some really cool ramp parts on the outsides of the track is awesome as well. I just think this track has now incorporated the train in a better way than ever. I had to put my bias aside from putting this in a top 10, and I know a lot of people are going to be upset that I even put it this high, but I love Shroom Ridge. Seriously, it is a vibey track. From the music, from the hills in the background and stuff, it's just a really cool track with the road up in the mountaintops, and it just really works. I can't really explain to you why, but this traffic going along its way too, and you interweaving in between them, it's like a much better Toad Turnpike, and I know it's still a very basic track overall, but I'm sorry, I'm putting it all the way up here because it deserves it. It's so good. Tick-Tock Clock is extremely original, as we don't have any type of like factory setting theme. Toad's Factory. Anyways, I really like this track. It's really cool that you're inside like of a giant clock and there's gears spinning and stuff. It's really different from Mario Kart. Like I said, we don't really have much like this at all. The closest being like maybe Bowser's Castle, so this was definitely a breath of fresh air to see return in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Piranha Plant Slide is one of those tracks that just makes you say, yep, that's a Mario themed track for sure. Going underground into the pipe and seeing like the Mario 1-2 underground area area with the bricks and everything is super cool, and the piranha plants trying to bite you. And then going down another level into an underwater section is really cool as well, almost as if you're following the levels of the original Super Mario Brothers. But yep, you pop out at the end, and there's some really cool shortcuts you can hit with mushrooms to really change the game, and this track is definitely deserving to be into the top 30. Grumble Volcano is going to be towards the top, I think, of everybody's list. Even though you don't like it that much, it's still probably at the top, because I don't like it that much, and I still had to put it at the top. It's a track that has lots of moving parts and pieces to it, volcanoes shooting down giant fire rocks at you, and even the track breaking down as you get towards the last lap. There's a lot of elements that makes this a really fun track to race on. Mario Kart 8 introduces a really fun version of Bowser's Castle once again, and this one just continues to impress with more of a factory themed setting on the inside, and also of course that giant statue of Bowser that tries to hit you as you're going by is really great. And seeing the outsides of the castle has always been my favorite parts of Bowser's Castle, and it definitely incorporates it here. You have zero gravity, you have flight sections, you have everything you possibly could need for Bowser's Castle. Number 27, we have Wild Woods, which was one originally that I wasn't a big fan of and just didn't see the appeal until I realized, man, they're going up a giant tree. This is awesome. It's one of the best uses for zero gravity when you realize that you start off on the side of the tree and you're going all the way up around it and into the trunk of the tree, all the way through the roots, all the way through the bottom, and shooting out where the water is. It's such a cool concept and design for a track. It's kind of insane. Even though the track itself doesn't do anything super special, the whole workings of how it actually works and comes together is actually quite impressive. Cloud Top Cruise is another track that personally I think could have been even better, and I love how good this track is going through the clouds and Bowser's airships, but I wish they incorporated the airships just a little bit more. I mean, you jump onto one and then you're off it before you even know it. Yes, this has already kind of been done with Airship Fortress, but guess what? It's not in this game. So yeah, if they would incorporate the airships just a little bit more, it would have been even higher, but it's already a really great track with a really great theme. I really do love it. Butte City to me is the better version of both of the F-Zero tracks. Once again, it does have that kind of fake fast thing where it feels like you're going super fast, but I mean, not really. You're not going that crazily fast. But yes, it has some sections where you actually have to make some really hard cuts and turns in order to succeed. And I really love the ending part where it has like this little bit of zero gravity where you can float as you're going down towards the finish line. It feels really good to race on. Music Park is literally a track based on rhythm and music, and I'm just like so mad we don't have any other tracks like this, because this is such a great idea. Just having everything bounce and flow to the actual theme that's playing for the track is so good, and it makes me want like a Rhythm Heaven track. DK Jungle doesn't just feel like a Donkey Kong themed track in a Mario Kart game, it feels like it was ripped directly from a game, and that game being Donkey Kong Country Returns, from the enemies such as the tikis that bounce back and forth, and even the giant screaming rocks that scream at you as you fly by. It's just completely thematic, and it feels really special in this game. It's a really fun track to race on too, going through the ancient ruins and stuff. It's a great one. I think Animal Crossing is one of the most slept on tracks in the entire game. Is the track itself that special? No, but it still takes a little bit of skill to weave in between the trees and stuff of the village and go throughout the beach area is really cool. But goodness gracious, the fact that you can change this track to 4 different themes based on the seasons is phenomenal. Winter's the best, of course, but it's just such a crazy concept that no other track does. And for that alone, it has to be amongst one of the best in this game. I mean, come on, that is awesome. Now moving into the second to last grouping of tracks, we have number 21, LA Laps, which is a really cool themed track. It's not just a road, you'll go through the sand by the beaches, you'll even fly over a baseball diamond because there's no Mario baseball on the Switch, so they had to put it here, I guess. And you'll even go through a really cool oil field area, which is funny just saying that out loud because why would that be cool? But it is, it actually is. For number 20, Cheeseland is the definition of a track brought back in the right way. As a classic track, this one was revamped completely and is super unique in my opinion. It's probably one of my favorite desert tracks ever, and I cannot stand desert tracks. Normally they're very slow, very boring, and very slippery, but this one just feels fast-paced and fun to drive on, and gliding through the giant valley of Cheese Mountains is really cool. I'm telling you right now, Ribbon Road had a chance to be number 1 if it incorporated more of the entire bedroom and like going through the toys and stuff like Toy Story, but you mostly stay on this one ribbon road. But even with that, it is so cool because the theme of this is a child's bedroom with all these really cool toys and stuff everywhere that you can take shortcuts on, and the clown cars coming out of the Jack-in-the-Box. I mean, it's perfect. I mean, seriously, If it just incorporated more of the bedroom, it would have been higher. But this was such another really good track brought back and designed in a really nice way. Koopa Cape is just a classic, and we had to see it return because it's just so good. It feels like a better water park than water park, believe it or not, because there's a really fun river section to go back and forth between the buildings, and then the slide at the end is just a perfect finishing touch. Well, technically it's not a slide now, they turned it into a tube, but still, it's really good. Shy Guy Falls is an extremely slept on track. I feel like no one talks enough about how well designed this track is. The fact that you're going up a giant waterfall, going all the way around the top with the wooden boardwalk in zero gravity, and then jetting down the waterfall at high speeds is so good, and there's branching paths, and it just looks like such a well-designed track with the Shy Guys dancing to the theme of the song as well in the background. This one definitely deserves more praise than it gets. I think Mushroom Gorge is a track that really depends on who you ask. Some people will say that it's a very, very great track, and some people will say it's absolutely horrible, like me against my friend. My friend hates this track, and I actually find it to be lots of fun. I know lots of the track is just kind of bouncing off of mushrooms, and you can get some bad bounces and fall in a pit, and it really sucks when that happens. Thankfully, they changed the lightning bolt because a lot of bad things could happen in this track with the lightning dropping you straight in the pit before that update. But I really also love that gap jump at the end because if you have a mushroom, you have a chance to take a very big risk, where if you get it, you can skip over like 4 or 5 places, but if you miss it, you'll go back 4 or 5. And I love that little type of risk within a Mario Kart track. Number 15, to me, Vancouver Velocity is the best tour city track by far. It doesn't spend a whole lot of time on the road, but takes you to different areas, which is really cool. A pine tree lit forest, which is really, really fun to drive on the boardwalk and stuff, and then to fly back into the city, and then also the fact that you can go on an ice skating rink is super cool. The park you can drive through, the nighttime lights in the city just reflect off the ground perfectly, and the music is one of the best themes in the entire Mario Kart 8 Deluxe video game. It is such a good track. I'm not gonna lie when I say this, but Rainbow Road Wii is a teensy bit overrated. And the only reason I put it up this high is because I know a lot of people would kill me if I didn't, because I know how much you guys love this track. This isn't all about me. I also incorporate what people find to be some of the most fun tracks in the game. And of course, everyone seems like they love Rainbow Road from the Wii, and it's a really good track with some shortcuts that you can hit and everything. Trust me, I completely get it, but I don't think it's anything near the best that we've ever seen. And in fact, I don't even think it's the best Mario Kart's Rainbow Road that we have seen. There's some really cool things I'm glad it's been brought back, like the really cool jumps and tricks that you could do in Mario Kart Wii, and the branching path. It feels like you're going super fast on this track, but it's stable. It doesn't feel unfair, and it feels like it's a really balanced, really fun track to race on. However, I think Rainbow Road from Mario Kart 7 does it better. It's not as fast or maybe as intense as the Wii version, but it's a longer, more fun ride as you're going around planets and changing different track sections. Like 1 minute you're just kind of playing on Rainbow Road, and then the next you're kind of driving on the moon, and then on Saturn's rings, and then bouncing off of mushrooms, and then flying through a meteor shower. There's just a lot going on in this Rainbow Road that does a lot more than most of the Rainbow Roads that we've seen. Ninja Hideaway is an awesome track coming from Tour, as one of the best Nitro tracks I think in the game, and it is challenging. It makes you have to race your butt off in order to finish first. There's a lot of sections where you can get caught up on the roofing, and there's a lot of places where you can fall down to a lower floor and get messed up, and you have to pay attention to every moving part of this track. But I love the theme of this ninja castle and flying through the little ninja Shy Guys. Everything about this track is unique, and it's challenging, and it's just rewarding to race on. And the last track of this section is number 11, DK Summit, where you're at this giant ski resort essentially, and you're going down a giant snow mountain after blasting to the top out of a cannon. And there's so many little tricks and ramps that you can bounce off of, and you can even do some cool shortcuts on the giant hole in the center of the map, which is really cool. And then go down to the bottom section where you can see the giant Jumbotron, and you're on it, which is so good, and the Shy Guys snowboarding, and you have to weave in between them. There's so much detail and fun elements of this track, you just have to love it. Now we go down to our final section, the top 10. Number 10, we have Yoshi's Circuit. I mean, come on. This track is a classic and will always be amongst one of the greats. It's shaped like a Yoshi, and this is a very difficult track to race on, which I love the difficulty in Mario Kart, as long as if it's fair. And this one feels fair. You just have to know how to hit your cuts and where to turn ahead of time, and you're good to go. But this track is just a vibe all the way. Great music, fun little shortcuts that you can take. It is really really a good track. Now, I don't know why it seems like a lot of people don't like this track, and maybe it's just I'm biased as a Zelda fan, but I'm telling you right now, this was done in probably the best way that they could have possibly done. Now, they could have had us driving around the entire of Zelda's world, like Forest Domain, Gerudo Canyon, Death Mountain, and stuff like that, and that would have been great, but what they did with this was more than enough considering the fact that this is a Mario Kart game. We can fly through the castle, see the soldiers waving at us, go through like a little forest area with the Deku Babas trying to eat us. I mean, come on, you really can't get better than what they gave us here. It's quick, it's easy to race through, and it's just a blast to race through, especially as a Zelda fan. I mean, this is everything that we could have asked for a cameo in Mario Kart, plus some. Hopefully it's not recency bias that's kicking my butt right now, but man, just seeing Donkey Kong Mountain return again felt so good. DK Mountain was always one of my favorite tracks, but it just feels better in this one for some reason. Yes, the bridge could be a little bit longer towards the end, it's changed a little bit, but the colors just pop and work so well with this. Normally lots of people hate the graphics, but the theming of this looks too good. I love the pop of the colors. It feels more Mario-like, and it just is so awesome to race down this giant mountain, and to see down the mountain where you came from is also really cool as well. This is a really nice track handled in such a great way, and yep, the shortcut returns as well. Number 8, we have Sunshine Airport. What would be so cool about an airport in a Mario game? I don't know, but this is awesome to be able to fly into the airplane and drive through it for a section and onto the wings, and then even fly up into the sky where you're flying right beside airplanes that are taking off. Just the background elements and the mechanics of this entire stage is so cool, and man, they made an airport feel like the coolest thing ever in a Mario game. I love this track, and as one of the first ones you'll race in this game, they really put a lot of effort into it. I don't think there's a person on planet Earth that hates Maple Tree Way. Maple Tree Way is such a fun, beautiful track to race through. Going through this giant fall-themed forest with wigglers walking around and hitting really tight cuts and U-turns is so much fun, even though they replaced the giant bouncy net with a glider section, which I kind of prefer the net. This is such a really beautiful track to be on. It doesn't go extremely fast, it doesn't have anything super difficult about it, but it's just a really beautiful, yes, I'll say it again, beautiful track. Now down to the final 5. Number 5, we have Yoshi's Island. Man, I love me some themed tracks, and did they snap with this one? From the theme song, from the different elements of the island that's literally stripped straight from the world map of the actual game, they absolutely snapped. Everything feels like it's thematic. Every section, every enemy that they added, everything, the background enemies, the characters all around, everything just bouncing around to the music, it just makes you smile playing on this track. I mean, I cannot imagine someone not enjoying this track, and it's so good to the point it just makes me mad that we don't have even more theme tracks based on the characters in this game because of how well this was implemented. Squeaky Clean Sprint felt like they took the amazing ideas from Ribbon Road and just expanded it and said, you know what, we're not going to limit the player to one road, we're going to have them able to drive around all over this bathroom, into the bathtub, into the drain, onto the shelves, everywhere, and man, it executes on all fronts. Oh my goodness, the water shooting up from the toilet, taking you to the top part of the shelves, giving you 3 branching paths to take from there around the finish line. This stage was so good and just shows that Nintendo still has some incredible ideas even late into Mario Kart 8's development. Number 3, we have Coconut Mall. Once again, a huge classic, and what would be cooler than going through an entire mall with your go-karts? And that's exactly why this one's so high. It has always been one of everyone's favorite tracks ever, and it just shows why, because it's so much fun to race through this mall and then bust out the top of the mall at the end and glide through into the parking lot is such a great idea. I don't even need to keep going on about this because you already know how good Coconut Mall can be. Number 2, we have Waluigi Pinball, another amazingly thematic track that's based off of a pinball machine. I mean, seriously, that is such a cool concept, and seeing all the neon lights and hearing the new sound effects and stuff, and the pinballs bounce on the actual track that you're on, you feel like you're not just racing around a pinball machine, you're in it, and you are the pinball racing with everybody else. And going down to the giant pinball open area at the bottom is awesome because you have to dodge the pinballs and watch out for items and other enemies and stuff. It's such a really cool themed track and deserves to be the top 5. And the number 1 track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe to me is none other than Mount Wario. I mean, come on. What an absolutely insanely beautiful track. It is one giant race. No laps, just checkpoints all the way to the end. And you start off at the very tippy top of this mountain and ideally make your way all the way down to the bottom to the lodge and the crowd cheering you on. It is too good of a track, man. I just don't know where to even stop talking about this thing. You go off into a cave and then off into a waterfall section, into a pine tree forest, down a giant ski slope. It just doesn't end, and it's just always fun. I've been playing this game for the last 9.5 years, and I will always be happy when this track is picked because it's just that good. And out of 96 tracks, it's so hard to pick which one's the best, but this one just kept popping up in my head non-stop, and I think it's more than deserving of being the #1 spot as the best track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. But thank you so much for tuning into this video and all the way to the end, because goodness gracious, this took me so long to make. So please show me your love and support by leaving a like and subscribing, because it helps out so much. Let's see how many of you we can get to subscribe from this video. And once again, remember, this was just based off of my opinion, and it's completely okay to disagree with my list today. That is just the beauty of it. Everyone's going to have their own different list. But real quick, I'll show you my tier list of how I placed everything up on the screen from left to right, also down the rows. But thank you so much for tuning in, and like always, I'll see you all on the next one. See you guys.